Basket pressing is sort of the more traditional method of pressing fermented grapes. The tank press is probably the more modern version, or the modern thought behind it. And here we use a couple of basket presses, one that's quite old and one that's more new and more frequently used, but a couple of tank presses as well. So for us to choose batches to go through a basket press, they've got to be small parcels, usually premium parcels as well. The amount of time it takes to press something by basket is a lot longer, but it's rewarding. You get a much gentler extraction and you have more control over what you're doing, but you do have to be quite patient. So this press, which is quite old, we're not exactly sure how old because it came from salvage and was installed in this winery later on, is quite slow and quite noisy, but quite gentle on the fruit. So you load all of your fermented grapes into this basket here, so you can fit a couple of tonne in that whole basket and fill it right up. And what happens, as opposed to the more modern basket press, which plunges down, this basket will all raise up. So this whole tray will move up like this by water pressure, so like a hydraulic pressure. It's quite old-fashioned the way that it runs. And you can imagine your fruit being squashed in here as the tray raises up until it comes to rest at about here. So this handle will end up at about that height and it all looks quite strange. And as it presses, you taste the juice that runs off, or the wine that runs off. Your first juice will be really quite lighter in flavour and colour, more delicate and quite aromatic. And then as it presses harder, you'll find something that's more full-bodied. There's more extraction, so there's more tannin and phenolics. And then eventually you'll reach a point where you know that you're extracting more phenolics and more bitterness than you're getting for the flavour. So that's when you choose to make your press cut. So this is the much more modern version of the old basket press. This is a stainless steel basket, which is easier to clean and more hygienic for that reason. But the press operates in a very similar way and does a very similar job. So again, it's all about a really slow and gentle extraction and having control over that point where you stop pressing. So there's a lot of opportunities to taste at the tray. So you have that first part of the pressing where juice flows more freely and it is a bit more rapid, although still somewhat slow. And if you taste at that stage, it's quite fruit forward. The palate is more gentle and supple, and it's quite aromatic. And then as you move through the pressing program, you find that richer and deeper flavours develop. You have more tannin, more body and more mouthfeel, and then at some point that will then become a more challenging palate. So with more extraction, you have more bitterness, more tannin again, and you make a decision on when to cut the wine based on the flavour versus bitterness and tannin extraction. So there's a large spread of time over which to make that decision, and a lot of tasting that goes on in the meantime, which makes it a lovely process to go through, but again quite time consuming, and you do have to be quite patient. So this, where the old basket press raised up against the ram, this is much more modern and convenient. This ram actually just presses down like a normal sort of plunger and squashes your cake of fruit in the bottom. So again, it has the tray at the bottom to collect juice and send it away. And all of these holes, as soon as you start pressing, juice will start running through all of them. As this ram comes down, juice will be flowing out of all of these holes. And the ram will just continue down until you've got just what we call a cake, and there's very little left at the end. For the amount and mass and volume that you started with, you end up with quite a small cake of pressed grape marc at the end, and seeds.